Hi, everyone. I'm Helaine,
And I'm Leanne. Welcome to Step Into Next
where we walk together from what was to what's
in
next.
business and life.
Well, today we've got a special one, Leanne. I am very excited to welcome my very good friend, Jonathan Gass Arieli, to the pod today. He's a special one. I've known him for a very long time, and this conversation is one that we've had in spurts over the past, I don't know, decade. And now we're going to let you guys all listen to it a little bit.
Woo woo.
Yeah. So, John, you've had quite the journey, quite the career. I think one of the things that I love about you is how you've navigated every twist and turn and high and low with epic amounts of resilience and curiosity. And I'm just excited for people to get to hear a little bit about how you've done it all through the good and bad. So, thank you and welcome.
I'm super excited to be here and have this conversation with the two of you, especially knowing how you operate in the world and like what matters and how value forward you are. I'm excited to be here and get to dive
Wait,
in.
speaking of values forward, I have to just comment on one thing your last name, which I love. Tell everyone
Yes.
again your last name,
So
please.
my last name is Arieli, which was a name that my wife and I created together. We had decided that we wanted to create a new lineage and a new chapter in our life of our family and our generations, and we felt very called to that name, which translates to line of God. Which was a very beautiful precursor. My wife is now in divinity school. She's getting a master's of theology
Okay, I love
or
all this.
master's of divinity. Oh, she'd get a little upset if I said it wrong.
Yikes.
Yeah,
Yikes.
we'll cut that on
Post
the
production.
We'll get to the universe later,
Yes,
but I
exactly.
love that. It just is a really beautiful modern touch to life and love. That's cool.
Thanks.
Okay, now let's dig in. So I, like Helene said in the intro, you two have been friends for a while. I've gotten to know you through you coming on the pod and learning all about you. You left me in preparation for the pod a 27-minute voice note. I just eight.
It was the longest voice note I've ever received.
I didn't know you could even make
I loved
eight
it. I
eight minute
actually
voice notes.
wanted to send one back at that level, but
Yeah. I loved it too. I sat at my computer taking notes, but you've had like a super interesting career. And like Helene said, I mean, you've really had a lot of bullet points on your career. This was not just like from one big thing to the next. You've jumped from the next to the next to the next to the next. You were a management consultant and a CFO in a lot of ways. I think since Helene and I both have an entrepreneurial background, I'd love to hear. We're going to kind of start midstream with Nomad Financial, which was the company you started. Tell us a little bit about that and what went down.
Yeah. So first was the fact that I always knew I had a calling, a pull to be an entrepreneur, to start my own business. And I knew that from a very young age, both in like who my heroes were. And then also once I experienced like what corporate life was like, I could tell that many parts of it weren't a great fit. And so at some point I knew this path would open up. And with Nomad, I had left a prior job. I got pulled in by some investors and board members of companies they were involved in, had invested in, who needed help. And through that process of realizing, okay, these founders need help, but they're getting a lot of bad advice, particularly when it comes to what they need financially, what they need on strategic planning. And so through that process, it led me to go, okay, there's a bigger theme here. Let me start a company to help more founders doing this. And that involved from starting off on just outsource CFO to the full finance function.
Wow, awesome. Okay, so how much can we talk about here? What give us the real juice now that we have the background. No, really.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what happened because I know, we on this podcast talk a lot about the downs like we said and ultimately there were some downs, but stopping short of saying everything happens for a reason, which we did talk about on a previous episode. Let's just talk about what happened in those dips and
Well,
what
I
you did
think
with it.
first what I'll share is that I was able to build a company and work with a lot of people I was very proud of. And
yes.
one of the big measurements for myself was one, what was the impact we had on the people we worked with.
Mm.
And so over a dozen companies we worked with became unicorns. We had a company exit for $1 billion while they were working with us. Like pretty cool stuff. But even more important were the people that we hired, we brought in, and were able to accelerate their careers. And so, to this day, I'm in touch with so many of my team members. I get to see the direction their careers have gone and what they're doing now, and how we were a meaningful part of that trajectory and that belief in them, and seeing their potential and helping them kind of navigate towards that. So that was like the exciting part. But also got to experience what does it feel like when you build a company with a founder that you're no longer aligned with,
Yeah.
and what that misalignment can look and feel like. And then as you get deeper into it, how it starts to pull at the fabric of both the company and about your joy with the company. And it led to some really hard decisions, some expensive decisions that kind of cascaded into what was at the time felt like a successful sale of the business, right? That was kind of like the end result we were both able to agree upon, was selling the business. And so, but it was, a moment in life where on a day-to-day during the day, you're like, I'd show up at the office and I'd be working on the team and running a business. And then it's like the rest of my time would be, how do I rescue this thing? How do we get it into a sale process? How do we get it sold? Right? How do we go through the due diligence process successfully? And then on the other side of it, how do we onboard successfully into the new company, particularly to achieve some of the aligned incentives that were set in place? And because I think of the compressed process, we probably made some decisions that I think looking back, we regret who you sold to, some people in our lives were like, I don't know if I would do this if I were you. I would be more patient. You're right. People do better.
When you hear that.
And when you hear that, and I think we were so far down the path, and it's a good lesson of like, these decisions we make where we think the momentum matters as opposed to the fact that we can pause and recess. And this is a thing you experience day-to-day life, right? I watch people go on holidays and go somewhere and realize they're not happy there, but they're like, well, I'm here. And it's like, you don't have to stay there. Get on a plane and fly somewhere else, right? And that's like a normal decision we make at any point in time. And on the really big decisions, I think would have been powerful for us to have that moment. And that led us down to selling to people who I think, I'm trying to think exactly how I want to frame it, but
not alignment, I think, is one of them.
Not alignment. Well, I think it was hard post sale to watch the way people made decisions. So they put somebody in charge of the New York office. These are like the first little things of you're like, something's not right. And then that person didn't really want that role on top of his other role because his other role is how he got paid. And so like, he didn't come to visit the office. He didn't come to the office for like a month. And so all these team members of mine are like, who are the new people that bought this company? Where are they?
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm having to like call them like, where are you guys? What are you doing? Right. And that was like the early sign. And then it became this after the people who actually ran the company when we were acquired, they had their own internal fight with the old CEO and the people in charge, and they got pushed out. And then I got to watch new folks make decisions that were lessons I had learned in like my first year of entrepreneurship. Wow. And I was like, how is this what's happening? And it reached a point.
Hard.
It was really challenging. It reached a point where I'd have team members reach out and, they're like, should I stay? Should I go get a new job? And I was like, I'm not going to,
maybe.
I was like, I'm not going to tell you to stay in a job that if you're unhappy. Like I have a moral threshold and I'm not going to do that. And if you think your career is going to be most successful here, you should stay here. But if you don't, you should make a decision best for you.
But that's interesting because you spoke before about one of your pride and joys with your career, and especially with Nomad, which was your company, was nurturing and mentoring and bringing people up. So then to be at this point where you're like, you got to do what's right for you and not have influence over them anymore. That must have been really hard.
It was hard, but I knew as long as I followed my moral compass in it, I could feel okay with that part. But and then the other thing that then happened is we were owed. We ran through a process called seller financing, and so you're getting paid future payments.
Sound familiar?
Love it.
And they defaulted on payments to us, and so suddenly at this point it's like, also this is all during COVID. And so I'm now walking around at this point, probably Los Angeles, feeling really depressed. I'm like, am I ever going to see like any of the money for this business I built? And there were times where I felt pretty confident that I treated it like a lottery ticket. And sometimes that lottery ticket I felt would pay out like 60%. And sometimes I thought it'd be 10% because there was a moment where I really thought they were going to destroy the entire business, including what was existing before they acquired us.
Can you back up a second and just explain for everyone listening who isn't familiar with how the seller financing piece would work? Because I think that's super interesting.
Yeah. So typically when you're selling the business, part of the contract is that there's now a loan involved, right? Okay. And that loan is that the buyer is going to pay out this loan over whatever the terms you agree upon. So a certain number of years, what are those payments? It could involve interest. And so suddenly the relationship is no longer like, they're not like, okay, they bought the company and now you've received the full payment. you've actually agreed now to be to a lender relationship and a debtor relationship.
So complicated.
And in this scenario, there are also senior debt holders above us on the in the debt stack, and
Again,
that also makes
Yeah,
a difference.
100%. Luckily,
Yeah.
he's a finance guy.
Yeah.
He understands all these things. But
now you do too. after.
yeah, but I think that, one of the things that I just like I love about everything you're saying is that you were doing a lot of context switching during this time where you would go in, you'd show up as you, right? You knew that your presence was important. You knew that your positivity and optimism was important to the people around you. And I
Yes.
think that like you are in service of the people that you surround yourself with,
Yeah.
and you never lost sight of that even during the darkest moments. But how did you deal with it? Like how did you handle it? And I think like we talked a lot about this because we did spend some time together during COVID with a group of other entrepreneurs traveling around. It was super fun. And it weighs on you when you show up and you give and you give and you give and you kind of put on that leadership hat that you have to do.
Yeah.
And then yet at the end of the day, to your point, how do we save this thing? It's a crumble of some sort. And I feel like you navigated that really beautifully, not just this time, but at other times too. So how did you get yourself through that?
And I'll just tack on to that because I experienced that myself with my company. How do you navigate all that with this tremendous amount of uncertainty hanging over? It's not like you just have to get through a tough spot. You don't even know if the company is going to last and be standing tomorrow.
I think in the end, there are kind of two parts of me that really made the difference of getting through. One is this resilience and this deep belief that I can pull the company and I can pull people with me, and that I have that internal strength. And I'm very inspired by people who in life, like our friend Colin O'Brady is literally crossing Antarctica. He just passed the South Pole, like on foot, unassisted, and like the craziest thing you'll ever witness. And
should he come on the pod?
You should definitely
probably
come on the pod.
Yeah. But like at the end.
Yeah.
Probably not mid, like Zoom.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And I think there are a lot of stories for people when you find out about what is internally possible and how far can we push ourselves and where are our limits. And some of those you experience physically in the world. I think sports or like distance running or people who do triathlons, right, experience this. And you can also experience, I think, in other parts of life, right, that I have the resilience to not only carry myself, but other people. So I think that's one part, but that's not enough. And I think the other part is the ability to rely on community and friends and family. And so some of the most important people in my life, I was able to call up and just talk to. And sometimes it was venting and they'd hold the space for me to vent. And sometimes it was a collaborative conversation. And sometimes it was just somebody to reassure me that like, you're on the right path, you're making the right decision, you're making the best decision with the information you have, and that matters. And I think when, in that mindset would then come back later when I would second guess myself when things weren't going right. And I could go back and be like, would I have changed my decision? And the answer is I wouldn't have, based on where I was at the moment and the information I had at the moment.
You just said something really interesting though. And this is why I wanted to have you on the pod, is that you can look back and say in wholeheartedness that you always made the best decision that you could with the information that you had.
Yes.
And
underline.
I do think that that's a really important point because so many people, you could look back and just be like, okay, well, we shouldn't have sold to them. We should have done X, Y, and Z. We should have like seen the business plan they had. We should have done this, and this in writing. But I think that that's part of why you're saying that you're able to get through it all with a smile on your face, with resilience, with positivity, because you always did the best that you could. And I wish more people could kind of like latch on to that like value and that crux and that understanding of, who they were X period of time ago was not the person they are right now.
And I think we're not supposed to know everything in life. You have to learn it.
Whoa, really?
Right? We have to go through the learning process. Right. And I've been the person where I look back and I signed an operating agreement where I was like, looking back, like that was a crazy agreement. But at the time I was a little naive and I was optimistic. I was like, oh, I cared more about building and then thinking through what happens when things don't go right. And if things don't go right, who's the right person? But at that moment, like I could tell you I could not imagine like my viewpoint of like the human population and what people are like and the variability within that is very different than it was when I was in my 20s, right? Where I assumed people operated more like me with more kindness and more care. And all life is learning. People operate in very different ways. Sometimes it's how they're wired, right? Sometimes they're just their brain and your brain are not going to be aligned in how they think. Sometimes it's how they've been raised or, their own traumas and how their traumas affect them. and how that leads to their decision making. And that part of my wisdom is like becoming aware of that, and then both helping myself and other people make better decisions through that awareness.
Yeah, I love
Beautiful.
that. I mean, it's so interesting too. Everything you're talking about, we talked about. I joked about the universe and your wife going to divinity school and the
Yeah.
beginning of your last name. I feel like everything that happened with your company, even the hard stuff, seems to have led you to where you're supposed to be, which is tell us a little bit about that. Like, tell us about your next step.
And
And
there's also been multiple punches in the face. Am I right?
yeah,
Like we're focusing on
Yes.
one massive punch.
Right.
Yes. Yeah.
But there have been a couple.
Or those were more than one. That was like a boxing match, whereas you're in multiple rounds of
True.
of
But also no
boxing.
one should punch Jonathan,
Uh,
in my opinion.
Obviously.
Thank you.
Yeah. But you've
Thank
been
you.
punched a bunch of times.
I have been, and I also then I think I continued, kind of after this journey, I was a little lost in what I wanted to do next. I didn't have a clear path on venture. I had an idea in real estate I wanted to pursue, but I had to be based in LA, and that was a moment in time where my wife and I decided living in New York was actually going to be our better long-term place, that LA wasn't going to be our home. And so I had to give up that dream. And as the process of giving up that dream, I took a couple more CFO roles. And this is a good example where I worked with an alignment coach, Mark Krasner. I'll give him a shout out because he's amazing and could not recommend him more. My wife also worked with him as she transitioned out of politics and into
Really weird.
yeah.
You would want to transition out of politics these
yes.
days?
Those weren't quite her
Such a
people.
play.
Yeah. I mean, she was on the Hillary Clinton campaign, working at the highest levels, hiding in the in a back room at the convention center when for hours when on the night of
Oh
it
Jesus.
was actually right before we met.
Yep.
So that night of the election, and so she then had tried to build a business in politics, thinking if I control more variables, I can make it more about the energy I want to call in, but there's only so far, and I think she realized spirituality was her path.
Through Mark.
Through
Through Mark's alignment.
Through Mark's
Somehow.
She went from politics to divinity school. That
Yeah.
is we need to have her on the podcast. for
Duh.
sure.
Yeah, she's wonderful. Obviously her biggest fan.
Yeah.
But I got to witness her go through her alignment process. And when you're living in the wake of another person who's moving that fast towards alignment, and you're seeing all the dominoes fall, I was actually jealous, right? I was experiencing, it was like a hit to me, like, why can't I experience that? And I didn't realize that I was just the person controlling that for myself, right? I was my own unlock. And so what happened is, and Mark talks about this, and he's actually building a framework that will be publicly launched at some time in the future. But he talks about, life might be pinching you, right? The universe is like pinching you. And you get used to the feeling of a pinch. You're like, I can deal with that pain, right? You're like, oh, okay, I don't want to go to the doctor. I have this pain in my leg. I don't want to go to the doctor. I can handle it. Eventually it gets stronger. And then the life slaps you in the face. And for me, I got caught in a work situation. I don't play politics. I don't engage in that. That's not the way I want to operate in the world. But also, like, it was a moment in life where I looked at the next 18 months of both how is my personal life integrating with work and what's the work itself going to be. And I didn't want to do that work. It didn't excite me. I was wildly bored by it. And then I looked at the, what do I want in life? I want to have kids. I want to start a family. I don't think I could have done it in the job, in this role, and their expectations. And it wasn't the way I want to operate in the world. And so once I kind of was able to let go of that pretty quickly, because I knew this was coming, that this is the time frame was shrinking of how long I could be in this work opportunity, that once I got on the other side of it, things started to unlock like really quickly. The universe is like, we're going to give you a soft landing. And that soft landing for me was an email about finally getting paid out for Nomad all those years later.
After another punch hit him. It was like,
yeah, we're going to hit you hard, but we're going to make you feel like things are going to be okay. And so that was a very helpful moment. And then not long afterwards, I was at a friend's wedding in Italy, and through conversations with a friend, one of the things that came up was that the happiest project I'd worked on in the last few years was buying this home in Joshua Tree and going through the entire renovation process and having a very, very clear vision for that home, and it performing really successfully as a vacation rental. It's called the Looking Glass in Joshua Tree or in Yucca Valley. Yeah, it's an amazing property. It's
unreal.
The earth, the ground that the house is built on feels magical. It's an original 1962 mid-century modern home that we brought back to life.
Real soul project for you.
Yeah. and I loved it. And I just like, I loved the whole process. It still is a process, right? We're still doing things in the home now.
But I want to say one thing about that, actually. We've talked about that on a bunch of different episodes. When you're in the liminal space in any capacity, just following a passion
Yeah.
or, something like a hobby or something you care about can really help clear the space to help you figure out what next step you should take. So I love that. I just want to flag
Just being,
Yeah.
right? Like just
And
showing up,
enjoying.
engaging in life and whatever that looks like. And for you, it was a side project. So how did this come full circle?
So I'll actually say one important moment to go back to that, which is like, how do you open up the space? Was that when I got back from Europe, I got hit up by a couple of recruiters who were like, "We have roles for you. They're companies backed by the best investors in the market. You should look at this." And I texted them both back. Not only am I not interested in the jobs, I'm not interested in any jobs like this ever again.
Lose my number.
Like lose my number effectively.
Yeah.
And it was a lot. It's like you could feel the heart being like,
Totally.
am I doing this right?
Yeah.
Should I be doing this? And it
Have
just
the
felt
chills.
so clearing. Like
Yeah.
just like it's like very straightforward. But the other thing was then talking to a friend who had been deploying money in hospitality, and I'd been thinking about beyond Airbnbs, which is, I think I probably will do more of them, but hotels and hospitality in general. And a friend who had been deploying money doing that through another partner, he had been sitting on this idea for a couple of years that there's also, with the gray wave that's upcoming, probably boutique hotel owners who are looking to sell, they're looking to retire, they need a path out.
What is the gray wave, John? I love waves.
The boomers are retiring, baby.
I know, but like, I want to make sure we're talking about this. Okay.
Yeah. So it's one of the major, it's going to be, amongst many major trends that are occurring. They're going to affect our lives. It is one of them, right? A huge transfer of wealth, but also of businesses. And you have a lot of business owners, and if they don't have a succession plan in place,
totally,
they have to figure that out. And hopefully many of them find that, because that's the retirement.
And you're going to find some of them, maybe.
We're going to find some of them.
Yeah.
That's our goal.
And a lot of it hopefully will go to women, as we've been learning about the great wealth transfer. There's a whole focus on the fact that women are going to grow wealth in part that way.
How do you, because you worked with a coach to get to this alignment. Can you share a little bit about that practice and, maybe some of the light bulb moments, not saying that, people that are listening or watching a clip can get them, but like, how did you know that something was starting to click? Like, did it feel in your body a certain way?
It's definitely a somatic experience. But there's also, you're getting feedback. Right. And so
what kind of feedback? I love feedback
from the universe,
or from really, which is the people that surround you. Right. And so one of the parts of feedback, I think, was this experience, right? It was connecting with this friend over this opportunity we want to go pursue together.
Yeah.
But also one of the big practices that I was doing was closing old loops. And so were there people in my life that maybe an ex-partner that we kind of, as we split, we didn't close our energetic loop properly, old business partners or team members, where it felt that there was still friction or something didn't quite hit right. And I wanted to go and close those loops and take ownership of like my part in that, right? And I think that's also a big idea. Even if I felt part of that relationship I was wronged, did I contribute to that environment that allowed that to happen?
Do you see that? I've seen a lot in my life. My relationships in business with former business partners, with people I worked with, often reflected some of the things that I was working on in all of my personal relationships and in the patterns I was creating or engaging in my life. So do you see the closing of the loop as sort of a breaking patterns process? And how did you actually do it?
It's a really good question. For most people, I wrote emails. For a couple people, I sent text messages. Like, if it was a closer friend where like we had an ongoing friendship, but we had a thing we had never dealt with, we just kind of like put to the side. Some people I would talk in person, or that would be the text is to get to the conversation in person. But for a lot of them, for the longer, harder ones, call it the ex-girlfriend, right? It was sending an email. And it was interesting to get the feedback from people, or it was somebody I worked with before. I knew that, our relationship had gotten messy. I was part of, all of us were part of the messiness, and I just wanted to take responsibility for that and be like, I'm sorry that I helped put you in that position.
I think that is really admirable, because in a lot of cases, what popped into my head was, well, what if you didn't really do anything wrong and they did? But we all are part of a dynamic.
We're all part of a dynamic. And I think this theme of patterns, when I look back at my career, I look back at people I worked with, how often I'm reliving the things that I need to work on, and what are my patterns. And you get caught in these these strange relationships at moments. You're so strange.
So strange.
I had a boss when I was like, I feel like we're in a bad like relationship. It's like you're my new passive aggressive girlfriend. You get mad at me for things 3 months ago, but you never provide me immediate feedback that something I could have fixed within like 45 minutes. I was like, why am I caught in this? Right? Like, why is this happening to me? It took me a long time to realize it's happening to me because of me. I am the one co-creating this dynamic. And I don't want to co-create dynamics like that. And actually that it's also, if I look forward, who are the people I want to work with in the future? I used to be afraid of the idea of working with a close friend. And if the thing works or you guys are working well, maybe then you could build a really good friendship with somebody. But now I want to work with people where if something goes wrong, we have the power of repair. That we're both committed to that as part of the journey, as opposed to avoidant or keeping everything arm's length, or the classic, it's a business decision, it's not personal, as though like our lives aren't bleeding into each other
Totally.
constantly.
I love that, because one of the things we talk about in this podcast is like who you choose to spend time with. And that also, for those of us that have a passion and maybe working as our hobby, we might as well spend time with people that we like. And for me, that's often friends. I have the controversial opinion that I love working with friends. And I think you also agree with that.
Yeah.
And I actually like kind of think it's a red flag. Like if you're not willing to get into business with your friends, then I worry for the people that you're working with.
Yeah.
Because, well, how are you treating them differently?
Or what's the part of you that you're hiding from?
Right.
Right? What are you scared of?
How are you
Guys,
not
I feel
showing
like
up
I'm
wholeheartedly?
honesty right now. I don't want to work with my friends.
Why? We work together, Leanne. We literally work together.
Right, but we didn't start off as friends. We started off as kind of colleagues and friendly.
But that's how it started, right? Like I mean, like when I hired you, it was like through a different phone call, and I was like, well, just come work with us. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then we continue to say yes to working together. So I am debunking you.
Okay.
Also, John, I did not receive a text message, so I feel like we have a healthy relationship, and I am going to take that all the way.
Well, I think you and I went through our patterns, and we repaired
Oh, we did?
multiple
Great.
times.
No, she's in the hot seat.
That's fair. It's been
Save
10
this
years.
for after the show.
Yeah, I mean, that's what close friendship can be sometimes.
Right. Over time,
And-
having
And
combos.
sometimes you hurt people without doing it purposely or being aware of
How
it.
did
Yeah.
Helaine hurt you, Jonathan? I'm just joking.
How did I hurt Helaine?
I don't.
Fair point. That's
Yeah.
closing the loop.
That's
Well,
just the loop.
we did all live together in a house for like 2 months. And so I think it was like a daily, like make somebody upset and repair it. Like it was just a fast loop. It was very fast. You had to
You had
quickly
to.
close it
You had
before the
to.
coffee was made the next morning.
Also, none of us had roommates before living together. Like we're
Yeah.
all like living independently. Even like at the time, Malia and I had only lived together for 3 months before this had gone down.
Yeah.
Which is crazy to look back at.
No, and I mean, I credit that time together, like kind of like, truly being forced to confront your challenges with friends very quickly. Like,
Yeah.
I really credit that time to why not only we're all so close, but really like, Joel, for instance, like,
Yeah.
one of the people that we live with, I really never really met before. We met like twice, and we're very similar. And so we definitely butted heads, but we were forced to like close the loop. I love
Yeah.
this concept of closing the loop
Yes.
on people that you care about,
Yes.
because you're forced to have the honest, vulnerable, straightforward conversations that we'd love to avoid.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because it's also a really good example of a time when the liminal space, the space in between,
Yeah.
isn't great.
Yes.
You don't want to sit in that space too long, maybe for a minute, but in other areas, you can sit in the liminal space a lot longer. So I think that's maybe a whole new episode.
Yeah, well, we were fighting over who got the Ethernet cord.
Oh, geez.
And so we had to, it was like an every hour kind
I'd
of
be
thing.
fighting
But
over who gets the snacks.
well, we were all doing like a whole 30, so it wasn't that exciting. But anyway, he ends up being one of my really good friends. You all
Yeah.
are. But I'm just saying, like,
Yeah.
I love this. And I love this concept of the like not good liminal space
Mhm.
between.
Yeah. And I think that one of the key things is recognizing I have my story. And my story is not your story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to share my story, my experience, and how I'm feeling. And I'm going to hold the space and allow you to do the same for me. And that's how we're going to go through this repair.
You're a wise old soul, really. And
I
you should
appreciate
be a
that.
coach yourself. What?
I actually do coach.
Oh, good.
I do coach. I do
Yeah.
coach. I take on a small number of clients, but I do coach.
And one of the questions I want to circle back to, the very first thing that you said, is that you always knew that maybe you were going to take a more entrepreneurial path based off of like who your heroes were.
Yes.
Who were your heroes?
I was going to say the same thing. I forgot to say
I mean,
that.
it was more business in general, because I think when I was like a child, I don't think I had an idea of like the concept of entrepreneurship the same way. But I thought Disney was like the coolest company that ever existed. So I'm like 12 years old and like Michael Eisner's my hero.
Disney Sunday Night Movie. Did
I
you
mean,
watch it
Disney
as a kid?
Disney Sunday Night Movie. The fact they owned ABC and they had TGIF, right? That was ABC.
TGIF.
The fact they bought ESPN, and so as a kid who grew up playing sports and watching sports, you're like, what more could they have? And actually, I was enough of a nerd to what I appreciated most. The thing that I still to this day remember was when they started relaunching animated films. And what I thought was the most brilliant thing was how they commercialized the animated film, that you could buy all the toys and the products and that you could bring the film home into your life.
Parents everywhere are like, curse you.
Yeah, it wasn't me. I didn't do it, but I appreciated it, what they were doing and how they allowed children to continue to interact with the characters.
Yeah, well,
And make money.
I am glad that they were your heroes because then now we have you, and very excited for you in this next chapter, which feels very aligned. I think, maybe a final question, but there are so many people that are in one of those moments that you have experienced. Like it's either pre-punch, it's post-punch, it's like in the in between of a long punch. Like any advice, final thoughts, like how do they get through this? If they're context switching, they're trying to build resilience, like notes to the younger Jonathan and everyone else.
So one is I call that process when people they've left the thing they know and they're unsure what's in front of them, the abyss. And it is hard. I don't want to sugarcoat it. That is hard. I've known people who've always kind of tried to figure out the next thing, and they're more speedy at, I guess, making that leap. That was never me. You enter the abyss, but I think I say this, and I think there is a baseline of like privilege because I could say this is like having had experience in my life, which also afforded me flexibility. Having 20 years of work experience means I could save up money and I could do this, which is, cut the cords from the old things, like let go of what you think you need to be safe, because those things aren't going to be safe. I'm sure most people have stepped into a role or company at some point in their life and they know that it wasn't right for them, right? You're like, it's the culture, it's the people, it's the role. I don't know. It's the mix of it. They're just in their gut. No, it's not right. And to be, honest enough with themselves to not hold on to that. And I say that knowing that there are a number of crises that we are entering, right? The meta crises around AI and job loss and climate change and what that is gonna bring. So I say that with a lot of gentleness and kindness, and I want to stress that. I know what I'm suggesting is very hard, and I don't even know if the version of me when I was much younger would have taken that advice. There was a job I took. I have distinct memories I took where I knew the yellow flags up front, and then for the first year of that job, those yellow flags did not pop up. I was like, oh, we're good. But man, did they come on fast for year two. And it's a bright red, 5-alarm fire. And, you can't escape those things.
Yeah. Nope. Well said. Thank you so much, Jonathan. We appreciate your wisdom and can't wait to chat with you again sometime soon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye.